Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good morning, NFC East. Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully the next time we have Good Morning NFC East, which will be Tuesday to kick off the new year, we'll be celebrating a division champion in the Philadelphia Eagles. But before we get started here, Tone to Shields, I have a week late airing of grievances here since I celebrated Festivus last Friday. I have a bone to pick with the Tennessee Titans in more ways than one.
Oh, man.
I am completely fine with what they did last night because last night's game did not mean anything for their playoff chances, their 0.0000001% chance to go into the wild card. Their chance to win is the AFC South. But for the sake of my fantasy teams that are in the championship and have Derrick Henry, I'm not happy this morning because I'm going to lose pretty much my 3 championship rounds because Derrick Henry did not play, which is the right call, by the way. But I also had to play Michael Gallup as a result of this, and I'm going up against CeeDee Lamb in 2 leagues.
Man, my fantasy team made the playoffs, was the number 1 seed, and got smacked in the first round. So was not a good look for me. But I do think the Eagles will have a different set of fortune. I think that going in as the number 1 seed, which they will this weekend, I think they go a lot further than just the divisional round, man. So much football to talk about. Obviously, the Cowboys played the Titans last night. We're definitely getting into that, Jeff. But Jalen Hurts, word around town is he may play. He
may play. I think he is playing. Yeah,
he showed up for practice yesterday. Throwing shoulder looked good. It was limited participation. He didn't participate in the ball security drills. You know how they got those those boxing gloves and they constantly are hitting the guys in the arms and trying to make sure they don't fumble the ball. He didn't participate in that, but he did participate in a good amount of the throwing drill. So, we were talking about this off air, and I've been thinking about this. The Eagles are a team who are notoriously known since last year for treading lightly when it comes to injuries, when it comes to treading lightly in terms of off-season training camp. They're really big on preserving their players and making sure they're as healthy as they possibly can be. What if this shoulder injury really wasn't as bad as we thought it was, or most people thought it was, but it was just a precautionary measure because they knew they were in a position to secure things without that Dallas win? What if they looked at it like you looked at it? Dallas means nothing. Let's let him rest for the week, have him finish his food against the New Orleans Saints. What's your thoughts about that?
So, I don't want to connect to anything I've experienced or I've seen anybody else experience, but I will say this. I bet that shoulder hurt on Monday. The Monday after the Bears game, I bet it hurt. And I bet it hurt that Tuesday. And I think the Eagles decided then, you know what? Let's give him some time to heal this, right? Because now it's been 13 days since that injury. And remember, last week was a short week, by the way. I don't know if the game being played Sunday would have had any effect on Jalen Hurts playing. I don't think it would have. But now that you had Christmas, you had that extra day of rest, because remember, they're going on 8 days rest here. I personally think that they wanted to give him a week, like you said, Tone. And then they'll say, okay, let's ramp it up a bit. Wednesday was pretty much I don't want to call it a veteran rest day, but it's that time of year where a lot of guys aren't going to practice Wednesday. I know everybody made such a big deal about that. I'm like, as a guy who does injury reports for a living at CBS, I can tell you all the BS that goes through with injuries, and just talking to teams and talking to, not necessarily coaches, but certain players, they'll tell you. I mean, Thursday was the telltale sign for Jalen Hurts if he has any chance of playing on Sunday. And him being a limited participant is huge. I think it'll probably be the same today. Again, John McMullen's in the trenches a lot more than I am. He's there every day. I'm there maybe a couple times, like if I'm lucky, just with other duties and stuff going on. But my guess today here, Tone, Jalen Hurts is a limited participant and he's questionable. That is my guess. But him working with the first team yesterday, I think that's a really good sign.
Absolutely. It's a really good sign for the Philadelphia Eagles going into the playoffs. One of the reasons for that is because outside of just the injury, people were fearful. The narrative is rust, right? Will he have too much rust going into the playoffs? We've seen number one seeds who've decided to rest guys that final week or a couple weeks before the end of the season, and then they get that bye, and they've had a minimum of 3 weeks rest, and then they come out flat. We've seen it happen before. We've also seen teams who haven't rested, who've decided to just go full force. They go out and win, and we've seen teams go full force and go out and lose, and we've seen teams go out and rest and win. So we've seen every possible scenario when it comes to how people want to approach that number one seed, how people want to approach the playoffs, even if you're not the number one seed. We've seen every which way how it turns out. My mindset always is to make sure you're as sharp as you possibly can be. Now, I'm kind of in the middle on that, right? What I mean is, yeah, you rest him, but you throw him out there for a couple series or so. Now, this was obviously dependent if he wasn't ready for today or ready for the Saints game, and he'll be healthy enough for the Giants, right? And that's assuming they would have locked up the number one seed already. So my mindset is always to try to go into the playoffs as sharp as you possibly can be. Just to keep that arm lubricated. Just to keep your mindset sharp, just to keep your preparation sharp. Just to keep your football mind as sharp as possible. So, that's my mindset, right? But what's your mindset entering the playoffs? Are you really big on resting guys? Are you really big on momentum? What's your thought process when it comes to that going into the playoffs?
See, I don't think there's a right way to do it, Tone. Everybody says this is the way you should do it. This is the way you should do it. I think you got to do what's best for your football team. For example, remember when the Eagles had the 1 seed in 17? I specifically remember this. Doug Pearson, not only did he rest his starters and everybody in week 17, remember the starters played the first series and that was it. But then they kind of got the week off, essentially. It was like a bye week. It was a legit bye week because they were not playing the next week. And so he kind of gave him the week off, kind of gave him the week to rest. And then they kind of went full force leading up to that divisional round game against the Falcons, which, again, we did not expect the Eagles to play the Falcons. If you remember, the Falcons were the 6th seed. Remember the Rams got upset by them. I was shocked. I was more shocked than anybody because the Rams looked like they were going to be a legit Super Bowl contender that year. That was Sean McVay's first year. And, they got upset by Atlanta, and, obviously we all know what happened. But, see, this is weird for me, Tone. I think if Hurts plays this week, and, again, I think he is going to play, and if they clinch, I don't know if I play him the next week. I think I'd sit a couple key guys or a couple of the veterans in that New York game. Even though you're going to have 2 full weeks off, I think a lot of teams are envious of the Eagles' position right now and what they decide to do. Now, if Hurts played in Week 18 against the Giants just a little bit, I wouldn't be against it. I just think Nick Sirianni has to do what's best for him. And judging by what Nick Sirianni has done in terms of preseason, in terms of Week 18 last year, when push comes to shove and the game doesn't mean anything, he doesn't play guys. And I think that would be the case if they wrap everything up. Which is why I didn't have that much of an issue with Tennessee doing it last night, because it doesn't matter if they beat the Dallas Cowboys. They still have to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 18 to clinch the AFC South.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with you, right? Especially if he is going to play this Sunday. If he is. But if he isn't, but I feel like there's an 80% chance he will. But if he doesn't, I would like him to get a series or two, maybe a quarter, if that, in that Giants game. But again, that's assuming he doesn't play this week and they lock it up. I'm really big on just staying sharp. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and that's fair. Like, that's a more than fair thing. If, again, I've seen Andy Reid rest guys for years with Philadelphia and for years with Kansas City. I've seen Sean McVay rest guys. But you're right. Like, if Jalen Hurts doesn't play this week, you would figure he gets a little bit of time against the Giants. But again, you know what? Next week's going to be really weird because if the Eagles win and Giants win, that game of Week 18 is essentially going to be a nothing burger 1 o'clock game. And it's going to be very frustrating to cover. It's going to be very frustrating to be at when there's actually going on around the league. And those two teams are wrapped up their playoff spot. And the Giants may even make it even more interesting because they could be the 6th seed, Tone. You're the Giants. Wouldn't you want to go back into Minnesota and find a way to get that 7th seed and see if you could go beat them again?
It's so interesting you bring that up because I thought the Giants had it. I thought I thought they were going to do it, but their defense faltered in the end.
It
wasn't any miracle work by Kirk Cousins at all. But you know what I mean. So
it was a weird play, right? It was a screen pass. Justin Jefferson did Justin Jefferson things. I mean, he's the best receiver in football. Got 2 great blocks, and the rest is it. I mean, Greg Joseph hitting a 61-yard field goal. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, that's another thing too. When I saw how far he was going to have to kick it, I'm like, okay, this game's going to overtime or something like.
By the way, I got a stat for you. Wait till you hear this. There have been 6 game-winning field goals of 60-plus yards in NFL history. 3 are against the Giants.
Damn.
And Jake Elliott's one of them.
Is that the kick that jump started the entire miracle run for the Eagles?
Yeah, that was a crazy game, but I love rewatching that game. That Carson Wentz pass to Alshon Jeffrey, I think, is of all the amazing plays he made in 17. I think that was his best play.
Yeah, I haven't seen that game in so long. I might have to rewatch it on NFL Plus. But yeah, so the Eagles are going to be without Lane Johnson for the rest of the season. CJ Gardner-Johnson, his 21-day practice window hasn't been activated at all. So 9 times out of 10, we're not going to see him into the playoffs. Vontae Maddox, we have no idea when he's coming back, if he's coming back at all. The Eagles are starting to suffer these injuries in key places. The injury that scares me the most. I know people always say the Lane Johnson injury is nerve-wracking, and I totally get it. But the Eagles have a lot of offensive line depth. They have Jeff Stoutland University. And again, I'm not saying anyone is on Lane Johnson's level, but if there's any group I have faith in, if injury happens, that's the offensive line. But in the DB room, you're missing 2 of your starting defensive backs at 2 key spots, the nickel and the safety. And the Eagles have been getting torched. Well, they got torched in the nickel without Vontae Maddox. We saw what it looked like. We saw what it looked like when he was there, and then all of a sudden, the entire complexion of the defense changed, Jeff. So
against good quarterbacks too, by the way.
Against good quarterbacks. Now, I'm of the mindset of most defenses can't really get it done against really, really good quarterbacks. I'm not saying great quarterbacks are untouchable, but I don't think it's completely Philadelphia centric that good quarterbacks thrive against that team's defense. You know what I mean? I don't think it's an Eagles problem. I think it's a league problem.
Yeah, thank you. So the Bills had the number 1 defense in football last year. They let Patrick Mahomes just do what he wanted to in 13 seconds. They let the Chiefs score essentially 36 points off them in a playoff game. Do I think the Bills defense sucks? No, I just think that's what happens in the National Football League now. It's when you face good quarterbacks, especially elite quarterback, you're going to get burnt. That's what I don't get. What doesn't this fan base understand? Like it's not even the fan base. It's media guys too. I don't understand. Like, don't you watch the league you cover?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. People there's a lot of people who like to create this narrative that the Philadelphia Eagles are the only team in the league that suffers against
because that's the only team they watch.
Good quarterbacks. And my thing is, that's just not factual. The best defense in the NFL, the best defense that we know of, right? And that's the San Francisco 49ers. They got torched by Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. We expect Patrick Mahomes to do Patrick Mahomes things. But still, he's an elite quarterback, and they are an elite defense. And what happened? They allowed that man to drop 40. Yeah. So this is not an Eagles issue. And I'm going to continue to hammer this nail because people are really dying on this cliff that, oh man, the Eagles defense, they suck against good quarterbacks. Well, damn it, a lot of defenses do. But we don't talk about them. We don't bring them up because it's not sexy. It doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, look at everybody that's faced Cincinnati this year, right? Cincinnati's faced some pretty good defenses. I mean, I think Tampa Bay I think they have a good defense. I don't think they have a great defense, but in the upper echelon of the league, Joe Burrow torched them. Not early, but when he got hot, that's what happened. It's the same thing with the Eagles on offense, right? You think you can stop Jalen Hurts. Well, stopping Jalen Hurts is, okay, he still gets 200 passing yards and 50 rushing yards, and the Eagles still score 25-plus points. I hate to tell people this, but do people realize the Eagles are averaging 29.7 points per game? That leads the league right now. They haven't done that. They haven't led the league since 1949. They haven't led. I think it's the third highest scoring offense in terms of points per game in the regular season history. 48 and 49, they were higher. And obviously, if you go through the whole 49 season, if you count the championship game as part of that, I know the NFL doesn't recognize this as part of the scoring average. They're outscoring the 49 team. So, again, I know a good defense does win championships, but I think a good defense that makes plays wins championships. That's the key. The Eagles have to get the turnovers. They didn't get that last week.
Yeah, they got one, and it led to a pick six. But other
than
that,
two.
Should have two. They definitely should have had a couple more. But again, the Eagles defense, yes, it is compromised without Avonte Maddox. It is compromised without C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And Avonte Maddox might be the biggest missing link because of how exposed it leaves the linebackers, how exposed it leaves Josiah Scott. He's a liability out there. I don't care how you slice it. But again, no defense in the NFL is going to have their best day against the best quarterback. Now, of course, there's going to be that day where, hey, that quarterback he's not in it. A defense has his number. Those days come. Those days happen. But
it's happened to Josh Allen this year.
Exactly. It's happened to everyone. But I'm not going to continue to allow the narrative to be spun that it's an Eagles issue. Most elite defenses, most good defenses struggle against elite quarterbacks. It's the nature of the beast. It's the way the NFL is designed. But I'm more curious. I'm more curious to hear what our guy Andrew DeCecco has to say about this topic. He's a staff reporter and content producer for InsideTheBirds.com. And man, he just does great work. I love his perspective on the game. Very rational. Just one of the more astute minds in this game, right? So I'm really glad that he's coming up on the show. Jeff, any final words before we get to this break?
I'm just glad I get to spend the first day of my new year sitting next to Andrew DeCecco in the press box at the Eagles, and we can complain about all the stuff we can complain about with the NFL.
I feel you on that. You guys are locked in on Good Morning NFC East. He's your guy, Jeff Kerr, and I'm your main man, Tone. This just a second. Next up, we have our other guy, Andrew DeCecco. Keep it locked, you guys. You don't want to miss this.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner,
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn,
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney,
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
and Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Always a pleasure to have Andrew DeCecco, one of my good friends in this business, on Good Morning NFC East. Andrew, got any New Year's resolutions coming up?
Nothing that I could think of yet, man. Just try to improve in all facets.
That's always a good New Year's resolution. I feel like you need to do that every day, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, if you strive to do that, you'll be all right. I'm not a big fan of resolutions. Just always try to be the best version of yourself every day.
You know what my New Year's resolution I think is going to be? To actually take up John Kincaid's proposal on getting into the soap operas like he does. No one knows a good soap opera like our buddy John Kincaid.
There you go. Now that's a resolution I can get on board with. Get on board, start watching some of these soap operas, and maybe I'll like it. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I said. It's funny how you know like characters in soap operas, but you don't actually watch them just from hearing them from guys like him. And my dad's a big soap opera nut. I swear, every time I come over to the house at 12:30, he's got Young and the Restless on.
I'm sure him and John would have something in common there. You know, the scary thing is you watch a couple episodes, maybe you get reeled in and you like it.
I think that's what happened to him. I think once he retired, he started getting into stuff he used to get into, and now he's hooked.
Yeah, well, if all it takes is a couple episodes for me to really get into a show. Obviously, lately I've been binging on Seinfeld. That's such a great show. I've been going back and rewatching some of the classics. So that's where I'm at.
Yes, and you know what? You can't go wrong with that. Like, so I don't know if I told you this. I watched the Festivus episode 7 times on Festivus.
You did. I watched it just the once, but I applaud your commitment.
Well, I got to rehash the scenes, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel, and all the fun. By the way, I don't eat bagels on Festivus.
Well, you're a smart man. You're abiding by Kramer's strike.
Yeah. What was he on strike for 11 and a half years or something like that?
Yeah.
Anyway, a team that I have to get into some football talk here. Did you get to watch any of the Dallas game last night, by the way?
I watched a little bit of it, and it's kind of what I would expect from a team coming off an emotional win on Christmas Eve, short week. There's not a lot of consistency throughout the NFL. If this season's taught us anything, Jeff, I thought that they would have been a lot more. The win would have been a lot more convincing. How about yourself?
Yeah, so I kind of treat it as, well, Tennessee, they obviously had nothing to play for. And I think Dallas kind of kept that mentality. I think Mike McCarthy was kind of like, okay, let's just win this game, keep the pressure on Philadelphia, and make sure no one seriously gets hurt. But I got to admit, I know Micah Parsons did play well last night, but Tennessee doesn't have a good offensive line. That club on his hand, that kind of scares me a bit, knowing that he injured that against the Eagles last week.
Yeah, I think that he poses a lot of threats for a lot of teams, and you sort of think that they were toying with the Titans in many regards. They didn't have a whole lot to play for. They just want to get in there, get a win, as you said. And I think that the Eagles and the Cowboys will meet each other down the road here. I don't know that the Eagles showed a whole lot. The game plan is going to be vastly different with the new quarterback under center, and it's going to be interesting. I think if when the Cowboys get in the playoffs, they're going to be one of those teams that you watch because they can go two different ways. They can be one that sort of makes a surge, or they can be one that's a one-and-done team because you don't know which one's going to show up week to week.
Yeah, I hate to say it, too, because Dak Prescott played well against the Eagles. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but those turnovers, you got to be scared if you're a Cowboys fan. That's 14 interceptions now on the season, and he's missed 5 games. I mean, Derek Carr literally just got benched for all the interceptions he had.
Yeah, that's a whole bizarre situation and unto itself. But yeah, the turnover situation, if you're Dallas, you have to look at that and wonder what's going on there. Dak had been a quarterback previously that had been very careful with the football, and now he's been a little bit more careless. He's forcing the ball uncharacteristically into windows, in which he probably shouldn't. He doesn't have a big arm, Jeff, and I think sometimes he's trying to sort of take the offense on his shoulders and trying to make some play hero ball, which we'd seen many years with Carson Wentz. So I think that if you're Dallas, you want to get back to the basics and what makes you such a successful offense and not really forcing the football in where it doesn't need to be.
I'll tell you what, too. I think that team really missed Tony Pollard last night. You can tell he's the train that makes the locomotive go, if you will. Ezekiel Elliott is fine. He can get the job done, but they need Tony Pollard if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, he's the guy that adds a unique dimension to their offense. You have the bruiser, the downhill bruiser in Zeke Elliott, but then you need that short area quickness running back, the explosive home run hitter in Tony Pollard. He's the better pass catcher of the two, and he just adds a whole nother element and layer to their offense, and he's what makes that function so effectively. Without him, their offense takes a big hit.
Washington, it wasn't as blown up as it probably should have been, maybe because we all anticipated it coming. But then benching Taylor Heineke and going back to Carson Wentz. I know they did it on Saturday, but Ron Rivera made it official this week. And, boy, you're really putting a lot of eggs in the basket relying on Carson Wentz to clinch a playoff spot for you.
Yeah, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. I don't know how that's going to – I don't know if that's going to play off very favorably for Washington, who are sitting right on the cusp of that final playoff spot, probably with the Green Bay Packers. I don't know if I think I would probably stay with the recipe for success. It's the relative term for Washington and keep Taylor Heineke in there. Again, Taylor Heineke is not the long-term solution there. And I don't know that Carson Wentz is either, but Heineke's the quintessential guy that you throw in there to add a spark. But as we all know, sparks don't last very long. They're meant to jumpstart and jolt the team. Carson Wentz was always meant to be the guy for them. He's the guy that's going to be able to make more of the throws. Taylor Heineke has a very limited repertoire, so I think that they think that their best path to victory is with Carson Wentz under center. Now we'll see if history repeats itself, or he's able to sort of overcome some of his shortcomings and take them into the playoffs. What a story that would be if somehow they ended up playing the Eagles in the playoffs, if that worked out that way.
Yeah, and it looks like they could be the 6 or 7 seed. I mean, well, that's what they would have to be. But I kind of wanted to ask you this, Andrew, with Carson Wentz. Doesn't it feel like they're putting Wentz back in, not just to see if he could take him to the playoffs, but if he can, that gives them a reason to make Carson Wentz their starting quarterback next year?
Absolutely. When you look at some of the players that are going to be up for there's going to be some teams and some quarterbacks that are going to be up for starting jobs next year. Carson Wentz is one of them. What do you do with them? And ordinarily, Jeff, this would be a guy who hadn't really played since, I don't know, when's the last time he played? A month and a half? Something like that. You enter free agency without really knowing, he's got dust pretty much collecting. And then you have someone like Gardner Minshew. What do you do with him? Nick Foles, he's going to be a guy that obviously he didn't have his best showcase on Monday night, but he's another guy that could be vying for either an outside shot as a starter or a prominent backup role. So I think this answers a lot of questions on what you do with Carson Wentz. If he's able to get the job done, you can move forward with him and sort of have alleviate the conundrum of who's your starter going to be next season. So I think it very much is a sample size, and they want to see if he's able to answer the bell.
Speaking of the quarterback conundrum, do the 49ers move on from Trey Lance after what they've seen for Brock Purdy?
They invested a lot in Trey Lance, and Trey Lance has not necessarily had the best luck. And when he has been on the field, he hasn't shown that the traits that you want to see in an eventual franchise quarterback. However, I still think that you need to give him a full season, a clean bill of health, and see what he's able to do. Brock Purdy is a nice story, but I think that he's a byproduct. His play is a byproduct of the talent around him. I don't know that he can't do some of the things that Trey Lance can. And you drafted Trey Lance for his explosive ability. He has a skill set that translates very favorably to the current landscape of the NFL, that dual threat ability that you really need to be able to do. So I think that they need to give him another run. But having Brock Purdy there on a favorable contract as well is a good fallback plan should anything go awry with their plans with Trey Lance.
Well, that's the thing, right? And I remember saying into the year, I understood why they went with Lance, besides that they invested all that draft capital in them, is if the ceiling for Trey Lance is even close to being met, the San Francisco 49ers are clearly the best team in the NFC. I mean, obviously that did not happen this year, and they are kind of limited with Brock Purdy, but yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to see, just for the sake of your own franchise, how good you can be with this guy, if it's possible.
Yeah, I think Trey Lance a healthy Trey Lance, if he plays to standard and what they envision, he takes that offense to a whole nother level, and they would be potent for many years to come. And that's why you drafted him, to be that X factor, to be that equalizer. So I think that they owe it to him and their franchise, because let's not forget that they invested significant capital to get him in there. I think you got to see it through before you're able to turn the page.
I brought this up with Tone on the first half of the show, and let's just say the Giants do what they probably should do. I know it's not exactly easy to do, but beat the Colts. Do what they should do here. Clinch a playoff spot. Week 18 comes around with the Eagles. The Eagles, we're assuming the Eagles are going to win here. Did the Giants try to lose that game and make sure they make every attempt to get that 7th seed so they have an opportunity to play Minnesota again?
But that would be unethical, right?
I don't care.
No. But wouldn't that go against what their coach was complaining about?
You mean Joe Judge?
On the other foot, when the shoe was on the other foot, they had they were singing a different tone. So, wouldn't that be ironic? I don't know how that was going to shake out. It's going to be really interesting these next couple weeks.
By the way, how funny was it yesterday when Doug Pearson said, "We'll never, ever, ever, ever rest starters"? And he was the Eagles coach when they basically pulled the all-time heist. It was the start.
I know. How ironic, but I'm surprised he didn't say that. He said it with a straight face. There was no wink or anything like that.
No. So, do you really think that was Doug's call, or do you think that was from upstairs?
I don't think that was Doug's call. I never did.
Yeah. Don't you think that kind of was, I don't know, maybe the tipping point of Doug's falling out with this organization?
In hindsight, yeah, I think ultimately it came down to a limited say, a lot of hands, a lot of chefs in the kitchen. You know how that saying goes. Yeah. And I think ultimately he's just like, look, I'm the head coach of this team, and I have all these other voices in my ear telling me what to do. That's not what I signed up for. And I think he just probably grew tired of it. And now you're seeing what he's able to do. He looks a lot happier. He looks almost reborn in a sense, and able to sort of mold another young quarterback. And just a fantastic job that he's done with Jacksonville in the 1 year turnaround. Wouldn't surprise me if he's a leading candidate for Coach of the Year based on everything he's been able to accomplish after a year away from the game.
I mean, seriously, that team had the number 1 overall pick, and now they're essentially 1 win away from a playoff spot. And I was talking to some people down in Jacksonville about, what the difference is between here and Philly, and they really didn't know what was going on in Philly, but they're like, he gets to pick like his whole coaching staff. They kind of let him run the ship. Trent Baalke kind of lets the football operations do. Doug Pearson kind of like what he did with Jim Harbaugh. I know those two butted heads in San Francisco, but in Jacksonville, it's like, okay, Doug, like, you're a Super Bowl champion coach. We're going by you. And I don't want to say Doug's ego got big, but I mean, Doug definitely had that ploy. Say, hey, look, I won you the Super Bowl here. I'm the one making you guys look good on the field. Like, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end he said, "Listen, I checked off all the boxes. These are the guys that I want for my staff." Remember, he came up with another. They said, "Come up with another list, and we'll talk." He came up with another list. The same guy, same guys were on there. He was dedicated and committed to those guys. That's who he envisioned filling out his staff, and he was stood behind it. They weren't behind it, so I think that was sort of the tipping point.
Yeah, exactly. So if I wanted to, if I want to just create a new radio show, I'd be like, hey, you know what? Let's get Andrew to check out. Let's get John Kincaid. And if the powers that be don't like it, well, I'll go take my talent somewhere else.
There you go.
Anyway, Andrew, but yeah, you're right. Like, it just seems like Doug has more freedom down there, and I'm happy for the guy. I think everybody in Philadelphia is rooting for Jacksonville to kind of. By the way, how about if Jacksonville wins? They're going to get a home playoff game. They win that Week 18 game. There's a potential the first round could be Trevor Lawrence versus Joe Burrow, or I'm kind of hoping that's the case. Like if Baltimore somehow would steal the AFC North, but it could be Trevor Lawrence versus Lamar Jackson as well.
Either way, it's going to be a quarterback showdown of some of the premier young talents. I'm rooting for a Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow matchup. Obviously, I think that the Bengals are going to completely overmatch the Jaguars, but it's going to be a great experience for someone like Trevor Lawrence, who's really come into his own. Again, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the great stories that come out of the 2022 season. So you want to see them be able to finish it out, at least play the Bengals or even the Ravens, play them tough down to the wire. Who knows? Maybe even grab a win. It would be a kind of a nice bow for Doug Peterson's resurgence.
So Doug is, let's just say he's your coach of the year. Who you got for MVP?
League MVP?
Yeah.
I think you still have to go with Jalen, given the position that he's helped guide the Eagles to this point. He's the most valuable player on the best team in football. It's clear as day to me. It's simple. Let's not overthink this. He's been throughout the season the most valuable player on the best team in football. So the Eagles wouldn't be where they are or in the position that they're in right now without him.
Yeah. And this is my argument for Jalen Hurts being MVP. Don't you think the Eagles beat the Cowboys if Jalen Hurts plays that game?
I think they win by double digits easily. I think they win by double digits in that game. Gardner Minshew played well. I got to give him credit. There's a couple. You mentioned that the Eagles should have had 2 turnovers. Well, the Cowboys could have had 2 more turnovers that they were fortunate enough. Gardner Minshew doesn't necessarily have much of an arm. I thought he fit the ball in where he needed to. I thought he was a little skittish in the pocket, but there is a night and day difference between the 2 quarterbacks aside from their play style. And you know that if Jalen Hurts was in there's opportunities on that field that you knew that he would take advantage of.
Yeah, and it didn't take a lot of plays in that game for me to realize like how big of a difference Jalen Hurts was. Yeah. You saw in the first drive, the third and I forget if it was the third and goal or it was a third and long, but Micah Parsons easily caught Gardner Minshew. I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts takes off and he might have scored a touchdown.
Yeah, or at least put him in conflict where he has to he has to play Jalen Hurts and make a play in space, which we saw in the first game when they put him in a bind and they read him. There's no threat to do that with Gardner Minshew there. So that whole game plan, and who knows, the Eagles may not have been showing much on purpose, even defensively, which has got, they were scrutinized rightfully so this week. They may not have shown much this week, knowing that they're going to see them down the line. So I mean, I don't know, but you're right. It's a night and day difference between the 2 quarterbacks, and that's ultimately impacted the game in a big way.
Yeah, and you're right, though. Like, they might not have shown much because you got to think ahead here. If you win the division, Dallas is going to be the 5 seed no matter what. If things go chalk, like we think, I know 5 beating 4 is in chalk, but if you look at records, it would be. That's who you're going to face, your first playoff game.
Yeah, so in their case, if you're Jonathan Gannon, you're not going to pull out all the stops against Dallas. You're going to save that for the playoff game. At least you hope so. Same thing offensively. You get Jalen Hurts back in there. You throw in some wrinkles that you hadn't seen all season because this will be the 3rd time these teams have faced. There's going to be plenty of stuff out there as far as quote unquote blueprint and how to beat, each respective team. So I think you'd see some mad scientist stuff going on there with Shane Steichen, Nick Sirianni offensively. And then you'd also see Jonathan Gannon hopefully be a little bit more aggressive in his approach and his tactical approach and how he's going to go against them because you can't let CeeDee Lamb run free. You just have to hope, but that's not what he's going to be doing in the playoffs.
What would you do if you're Jonathan Gannon? I'm going to let you play Jonathan Gannon right now. You don't have Avonte Maddox. Who's your slot? You don't have CJ Gardner-Johnson right now here. I mean, what do you do? Who plays the slot for you right now?
Well, the easy thing would be to put C.J. Gardner-Johnson in there, but you're taking a player who has been playing very safety at a high level this year and moving him into slot, which is a valuable position. Don't get me wrong; you're on the field for the majority of the game. That's not a reserve position or anything like that. But I think I would keep Gardner-Johnson at safety, and I would probably and the second, and I would keep Josiah in there at nickel. But here's the thing: the secondary as a whole is going to function a lot more efficiently with CJ Gardner-Johnson back there. Like that that play, that 3rd and 30 is an interception with Gardner-Johnson coming over the top there, for example. I think you're able to mask some of the deficiencies with better players in your secondary, and I think CJ Gardner-Johnson would effectively do so. And the defense is going to get a lot better, guys. Let's not forget, I mean, they haven't opened up his 21-day window yet. He's coming off a lacerated kidney. You don't need him to beat the Saints this week, ideally. So you could bring him back hopefully next week. Robert Quinn's eligible to come back next week.
Yep.
Let's not forget, I mean, obviously he had a couple of sacks, but he would be another player you can add into a pass rush that's really hit its stride the second half of the season, and he wouldn't have to be a focal point. You can throw him in there as a fastball off the edge. I mean, there's a couple of reinforcements coming. We obviously don't know the extent of Vontae Maddox's injury other than he's out indefinitely, but knowing that CJ Gardner-Johnson's coming back certainly solidifies the back end in the interim.
What would you do on the offensive line? Would you move Mailata over, or do you just kind of roll with Jack Driscoll?
I think I would not move Mailata to right tackle because then you make your offensive line weaker in 2 spots. Mm-hmm. I would keep Mailata at left, and I would put Jack Driscoll in at right tackle. Remember, that's where the Eagles envisioned him playing. He started his first game of his career at right tackle. Can also play a little right guard, but I would start that way. Knowing Driscoll's played a lot of snaps for the Eagles this year, and he's a player that they really like. He's grown a lot. He's got a little bit stronger. That was his big hiccup coming out of the draft. He didn't necessarily have the play strength yet. It was a developmental phase. I will keep him at right tackle, and if should that experiment not work or should that approach not work, then you consider moving Mailata to right tackle and Dillard at left. But I think right now you would not only affect continuity, but you also get weaker in 2 spots in a big way. So that would be the way that I would sort of approach it.
Yeah, see, I'm on the same page as you, right? Give Jack Driscoll that opportunity the last 2 games. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think Lane comes back for the first playoff game anyway. It seems like Lane's hell-bent on he'll be back for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's a tough guy, man. I mean, I've had the opportunity to cover guys like Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson who play through some of the most gruesome injuries, and who knows how many other ones they've played through. My hat's off to him. That's a very painful injury, especially for an offensive lineman, no less. But he's hell bent on playing, like you said, and I think he wants to see it through. We both know that he said, I believe when he spoke earlier this year, it came out that he only intends on playing another year or two. If he's able to lay it all on the line and they get 1 year, they get it done this year, who knows what the future holds for Lane? But I wouldn't doubt him at all. I think he's going to be out there.
Do you remember? Were you with us in 2020 when Lane pretty much showed? Remember when he had the foot injury and he showed everybody how bad his foot actually was? He goes, "Oh, this is without the stitches." I'm like, "What are you, insane?" Like, so if he's playing through that, you figure he could play for some abdominal injury. No matter, I mean, the guy's a warrior. I'll just say that much.
He's as tough as they come. The Eagles have a lot of tough soldiers on that team, and Lane Johnson is one of the leaders in that locker room. He's committed to winning. He's committed to his teammates, and I have no doubt that he's going to be playing through that. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's playing at the same high level that we've seen. It's Lane Johnson. He's superhuman and the best tackle in football. You heard Nick Sirianni say it. Not the best right tackle, the best tackle in the NFL.
Well, the stats back that up too. So I mean, he doesn't give up sacks. He only gave up 2 pressures over the last 8 games. That's insane. I don't care what side of the line you're playing on. By the way, Andrew, I'm glad you kind of brought this up. So let's just say the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Let's play hypothetical here. You got Brandon Graham, you got Jason Kelsey, you got Lane Johnson. Do you think those 3 just say, "Man, we got 2, we're good"?
I don't know if Brandon Graham says that.
But
the other 2,
Jason and Lane might.
The other 2, I think that you can make a case for it because they've accomplished so much in their careers. They've been they've been steadfast. They've been stalwarts on that offensive line for many years, and to go out on top like that, that's every player's dream. So I think that you would start to see some chatter and some speculation should that materialize.
By the way, were you with me? Was it the Titans game? I think it was the Titans game when BG was just going around the locker room saying, you all picked us to lose. Y'all picked us to lose.
Yeah,
he pointed at me and said, you only picked us to win by 10 or something like that. I'm talking to Miles Sanders. He's just laughing. And Miles goes, man, that guy's just having fun right now. He said he's going for that second ring. And yeah, I mean, you can tell like Brandon Graham ultimately, I don't think he wants to play his whole career in Philly, but that guy just loves football. I just think he loves the camaraderie of being in an NFL locker room.
Yeah, and he's another player that's sort of like reborn. He's playing a lesser snap share, which has really helped him. He's one sack away from reaching double-digit sacks for the first time in his career, which I think he ultimately gets this week. He's playing with a renewed energy at this point in the season. He's not as worn down. He's terrific against the run. He's a great locker room guy. I can't say enough about his leadership. I think he sticks around for a little longer, just knowing how much he loves the game. His energy is infectious, so it wouldn't surprise me.
If the Eagles don't go to the Super Bowl, what is going to be the biggest reason why?
I think it could be communication on the lack of communication on the back end.
That makes sense.
Sort of what we saw on Christmas Eve against, you're going against better quarterbacks, and any lack of communication and any late step, it's going to cost you in the playoffs. Everything is magnified. That they're not going to be able to. Sometimes you can't overcome it, no matter how good you are as a team. So communication has to be essential. That's why you wait a little while. You wait an extra week to get a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson back there to make sure that back end is as solidified as it can be, knowing how teams are going to look to exploit the aerial attack. That's what teams look to do these days. I think the running game has been solidified with somebody like Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. That's not a problem anymore. It's not the team's Achilles heel. But I do think that the Dallas game exposed some warts that you want to be mindful of, and you want to make sure you have everybody back there as healthy as possible during the most important games of the season.
You and I played high school football. We spent 4 years in those locker rooms. We've covered college locker rooms. We covered pro locker rooms. Did you have an issue with Darius Slay basically calling out Josiah Scott and Reed Blankenship on Twitter, even though he inadvertently did it?
I'm glad you brought that up. I did have a problem with it. You're appointed a team captain for the first time, I believe, in his career. You're known as being a locker room pillar. You're always jovial after games. You're the life of the party, and you're a great interview, and you're very well respected amongst your teammates. To throw someone under the bus like that was totally uncalled for. Take a guy off to the side. Hey, Reed. Hey, Josiah. This is what you could have. This is what I saw in that play. This is what I needed you to do. This is what your responsibility was. But to call somebody out, a young player, not only is that totally, not what you would expect from a leadership standpoint, but what do you think it does to a young player's confidence, right? I mean, you're really putting the spotlight on them, and now they're going to be second guessing themselves potentially out there. There's many leaders in that team that most leaders, everyone on that team, nobody would have done that. So I thought that was a little uncharacteristic, and it was a telltale for me that like the first sign of adversity, the significant adversity that you sort of saw that the team was so together and has been all year. That's not something you want to see seep through. I think that was a little uncharacteristic for Slay and probably in a moment of frustration. But I mean, I wasn't a fan of it.
No, I wasn't either. And again, I feel like the competitor in me, the person in me would watch that play and be like, wait, why did T.Y. Hilton get past you again? Or, the guy was out of the league 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and you're Darius Slay. You're going to be an all-pro. Like, don't sell me out when you're part of the problem too. And
sure.
Yeah, and that's the issue I have with it. You're right. The first sign of adversity, all of a sudden, it's not my fault. And you've heard Darius do this before when he has bad game. Well, remember the DK Metcalf game? Well, it was. I'm like, at the end of the day,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, and you're right though. At the end of the day, he's not. I don't think he's a me first guy at all, but he definitely looks out for himself.
Yeah, and I think if some players, maybe some corners in particular, you're very I don't want to say you're very aware of how it may look if you give up a big play on social media or amongst the media or being under fire, under scrutiny. You know, it looks like it was you on that play. You want to absolve yourself of any potential embarrassment. But like I said, man, you have to take accountability. You're a leader. Even if it wasn't you, it's we have to do better. I have to do better, not they. It should never be they. Those are your teammates that you go out with and you battle for 60 minutes every week. You built close-knit relationships, anything like that. I mean, I'm sure that it's not going to hinder Josiah Scott's confidence or development, or Reed Blankenship for that matter, but it might.
Yeah, you never know.
It comes down to trust, Jeff. And you don't want to see somebody, you don't want to see a teammate who you fought alongside week in and week out kind of throw you under the bus like that. I think it was a blip on the radar. I mean, you hope it was for Slay and not something that's going to rear its head again. And it could have it probably was a moment of frustration, but still not something you want to see from a team captain.
Yeah, exactly. And now you wonder why it took 10 years to be a team captain. Because everything I've always heard about Darius and even talking to him, you're like, why did it take so long for this guy to be a captain, even in Detroit? But, I mean, can you imagine the rift between him and Matt Patricia? We know that still goes on, but sometimes it goes both ways. And I'm sure if you ask Patricia deep down, he'd be like, well, this is the kind of stuff he did.
Yeah, exactly. It's a two-way street, man. It's never just the one person's viewpoint. It takes two to tango, as they say. So he wasn't absolved of that. He wasn't an innocent. Patricia wasn't the only guilty party. It takes two to have a fractured relationship. So I do think there was some merit to that, and you have to look at history, man. So you just hope that doesn't rear its head again, because this locker room is so special because it's so connected and together, and connectivity is one of Nick Sirianni's main focal points, teaching points. And that's what he emphasizes. He wants his team to be together. You don't want to see something like that. And that kind of caught me off guard after the game.
Yeah, it did. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but like you said, I mean, we just talked about it for 7-8 minutes here. I ultimately think Darius is going to be all right, but I think that's one of those, like, I still don't know how you're a professional athlete and you actually go on that Bird app, because everything is filled with vitriol and negativity. Like, Darius Slay could not give up a completion all season. People would tell him he sucks.
I'll tell you one thing that drove me nuts after that game. I just was scrolling through the timeline after that game, and the amount of just negativity and naysayers and discrediting what Darius Slay has done all season. I mean, look what he did to Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's played at an all-pro level this season, and it only took one game for a vast majority of folks, or at least a large majority, to start to discredit him and poke and prod his play. And I'm like, it's like, what have you done for the last 5 minutes? He's been a really productive player and played at an all-pro level. And it only took a couple bad plays for that to be, sort of extinguished.
You know what I think it is? It's this stupid mentality that, we got to shut Dallas Cowboys fans up. Well, I've been telling you, I'll tell you this. I've been watching Eagles Cowboys games for 30 years. Nothing shuts them up. It's just a matter. They'll always bring up 5 Super Bowls, always bring up this stupid hate. Like, just ignore it. Like, I don't care. I have Cowboys fans on this thing that come on and say, oh, we beat you. I'm like, we? I didn't know you played. Like, I just don't get, like, this vindication here. At the end of the day, the Eagles are 2 games up on them with 2 games to play. That game didn't mean that much.
It's a regular season game, so if they want to jump up and down and applaud themselves for that, pat themselves in the back, great. I mean, the money is made and teams are put to the test in the playoffs, and that's what ultimately matters. So the 2 teams are going to see each other again. So the Eagles are going to have a chance to have the final say.
Yeah, and that's going to be a great game for us to be at. Andrew, once again, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. I'd love to have you on it every week if possible. I just love having our conversations on here.
I appreciate that, man. Likewise. And I want to say Happy New Year to you and all your listeners and watchers out there. I appreciate everything. I look forward to chatting with you and chopping it up on New Year's Day.
Yeah, hopefully we're not buzzed by then. I doubt, though, because we're professionals.
Yeah.
All right, exactly. Dude, I appreciate you, my friend. I'll talk to you Sunday.
All right.
I'll see ya. Okay, Andrew DeCecco, everybody. I love having him on, man. I talk to Andrew every Sunday in that press box. We sit next to each other with John and KK from 97.5 The Fanatic. We have excellent conversations about football, about life. It's all good times, man. And man, I just enjoy, covering that team, going in the locker room. And like Andrew said, like there was no issues with team camaraderie at all this season. At all, until that tweet came out with Darius Slay. And I didn't think too much of it at the time. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess he's selling out Josiah Scott and Reed Blankenship there, but then it blew up. And unfortunately, that's what you got to deal with. And you're thinking, wait a minute, this guy's a team captain. He can't be doing this stuff. And look, I think that's all under the bus now. I think Darius Slay regrets tweeting that, it's he of the moment type thing. But it's like I was always taught, character is always shown when you're up against it. So, yeah, you can keep a straight face, you can smile. I mean, I've been through it. We've all been through it, right? We've all had our he in the moment, things we wish we could take back. And I'm sure Darius Slay was like that. And, I have that. I have those moments when I'm coaching, when I'm in competitive bowling tournaments, you don't want to, get upset. You don't want, but again, and you don't take it out on other people. You just kind of, I've learned how to deal with it. You just kind of sit in the back and you just kind of watch with a straight face. And, you got to teach yourself how to do that and teach yourself this, just not say the wrong thing at the wrong time. I know it's tough. And Darius Slay, I hope he learned a lesson from it. I mean, look, we're all human. He's been in the league 10 years. I'm sure he understands. Again, but I do think the Eagles finish everything off this week. And for those of you who missed the top of the show, I think Jalen Hurts plays Sunday. I think he'll be a limited participant today. I think he'll be questionable. And I think he ultimately plays Sunday. I don't expect Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to play Sunday. I think they're good. Lacerated kidney. I would not mess with that at all. So I give him some time there. I saw one of the listeners ask me about Derek Carr, whether he should demand a trade from Vegas. Derek Carr's going to be gone. There's no way he comes back. There's no way he comes back to the Raiders. Where will he go? I don't know. But yeah, there's no way he's coming back to the organization. I have no idea what Vegas is going to do. And I think you asked me about Devontae Adams too. I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Devontae Adams because he went to Vegas because of Derek Carr. Well, Derek Carr's gone. You're Devontae Adams. I think you say to yourself, oh, hold on a second. Do I really want to be here? Do I want to be part of this mess? Josh McDaniels should not be the head coach of that football team next year, but he probably will be. I think Josh McDaniels is totally sold on blaming Derek Carr, just like how he totally blames everybody else for all his failures as a head coach. That's just one of those guys. He's just one of those people, man. He's not a good head coach. He just isn't. Should not be a head coach next year, but he probably will be. It's unfortunate. Okay, guys. I'll be at the Eagles game Sunday. I'll give you a recap on Tuesday. We don't have a show Monday because of New Year's Day. I should have worn my Penn State stuff today. I wear it every other time. I should have worn it today because Penn State plays in the Rose Bowl on Monday. And for my mistake, I thought we had a show Monday. But, Monday is we're observing the New Year's holiday. So I'll be back on Tuesday working on a special guest for Tuesday. So we'll have that. But this is Good Morning NFC East, everybody. My name is Jeff Kerr, Bird Street 65, Joe McDonald, and John McMullen. Coming up next, have a good weekend, guys. Have a good New Year's Eve. Have a safe New Year's Eve. And have a good New Year.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit the Ocean.